Surprise! It's time to talk about Amber. Amber who? Amber Heard? No. I'm talking about amber in perfume. The history of amber, the concept of amber, and how it's put together. We're going to start off by going over the materials that are at the disposal of the perfumer. Now, these are all materials that I have in my own collection that were once part of my burgeoning perfumer's organ. And I think what we'll do is we'll start to discuss the naturals or the natural derivatives, and then we'll move on to some of the synthetics. Now, I can imagine a lot of you have a lot of questions on what exactly goes into an amber. Some of you may even want to discuss some of the changes in the way that an amber for perfume is called and referred to. There are those who theorize that the word Oriental is now an offensive term, and in an attempt to decolonize the art of perfume, to move away from that moniker. I don't feel strongly either way, but I do err on the side of caution. And for me personally, for the sake of making everyone feel comfortable, even if my beliefs aside, my beliefs are not as important. Making sure that people feel comfortable is more important to me. So I just err on the side of caution, and I go with amber. But originally, the amber was referred to as the Oriental. And we're going to chat about how an amber accord is also put together. And you might be surprised by what that entails. So we're going to get started by taking a look at the chat here. Welcome, Pearly. Hi, Margie. Good to see you. Happy holidays to you, too. And your scent of the day, Serge Lutin's La Fille de Berlin. La Fille de Berlin. La Fille de Berlin. Amber is my favorite genre. We have 8 people currently, and this should be a riveting discussion. And for the first hour, we're going to go over those perfume materials, much like we did in the first of the Notes and Accords series. And then in the second hour, I'm going to talk about some of the classic examples of ambers in the history of perfume. So I look forward to that as well. Pat Lester, hi. Me too. I'm excited for every one of these that will be coming up on a monthly basis. The next month, we will have tobacco. We have 11 people tuned in. If anybody is willing, speak up. Don't be shy. This is a space for perfume lovers. We all support each other. There's no gatekeeping here. There's no telling others what's right and what's wrong. What is the correct way to enjoy perfumery and the incorrect way? How many bottles are not enough? How many bottles are too much in a collection? Price is not a factor. Quality is something that we can unpack. And that you don't necessarily have to spend lots of money to indulge in the beauty of perfume. So we're going to allow for some more people to tune in, and then we'll get started with the discussion. I'm really eager for this because I see all the perfume materials over here. And I'm just really thrilled to talk about all of the wonderful nuances and the beautiful qualities of these materials that we may often take for granted as the perfume enthusiast. I think I also want to touch upon the reviewer and the journalist in us. How do we choose to approach perfume? we can think about how it affects us at the most primal level. We can think about the memories that it evokes. We can explore the possibility that we might even have synesthesia, associating scent with color or sound. And we can also think about how do we identify things in a perfume, and how much of it do we really need to identify? I think that a healthy balance is a little bit of analysis and a little bit of magic, and just going with your imagination and just feeling that. And too much or too little may not make you the most effective reviewer and writer and evaluator of perfume. But if your goal isn't to review and write and evaluate and make content, then there's no pressure, because you could just enjoy perfume as it is. Hey, hi Michi. Dans le bleu qui pétille. Very nice, from Serge Lutens. Antonio, hello. "13 people tuned in. We're going to get started with a discussion in about 2 minutes. If anybody else would like to share their scent of the morning, day, afternoon, evening, wee hours, let us know. I think while we wait just a couple more minutes, for anybody who's tuned in right now, tell me, what are the 3 main components in creating an amber accord? Can anybody tell me in the chat? What are those 3 main components? Now, there's no absolute correct answer, but there is a traditional answer to that, and it's 3. Can anybody mention in the chat what those 3 components are in an amber accord? Pearlie mentions that he's sampling the Celine line. And Boo! Boo! Crayon Sand. Thank you, Boo. And thank you for the answer, Boo. That is correct. Labdanum, benzoin, and vanilla. I will still give you credit for the abbreviation, I presume. Very nice. However, for something to be an amber in perfume, you can stretch that. So can anybody else tell me what other things that you could add to stretch that definition in creating an amber? The artist formerly known as Oriental. In creating an amber. So to refine that a bit, we're not talking about spices like spicy ambers or floral ambers. We're just talking about what else could revolve, what else could orbit around those 3 in a fleshed out amber accord. Let's see if yes, congratulations, but yes to Paroli, a Popinax. That's one great one. Can anybody else, or you can too, Paroli. And Antonio mentions Scent of the Day, Overture Woman. So we have one, a Popinax. Now, a Popinax is an example of what? And if we get that answer, we can think of others that fall into that category. Now, there's one, and then there's another. And both of these are what we call exudates that come from botanical species. One is called, and the other is called, we have 18 people tuned in. Who can tell me? Benzoin's actually one of them. I won't start until I get an answer. And I know some people are anxiously awaiting my sharing some of these materials. Brilliant. That's another one. Myrrh. Great. There are two things that there are two labels. There are two labels for different exudates. Perfect, Margie. Oh, Peroli, Styrax. Yeah, Styrax. Styrax can involve that orbit. We talked in great detail about Styrax and leather, but Margie did give one of the answers. Resins, yes. Now, Peroli, you're about to give the other answer if you complete that. Tolu is another one, and Tolu is a type of... We'll be patient. Tolu is one. Ah, perfect. Oh, great, great. We got two people. Excellent. So now that we know resins, balsams. So now that we know that resins and balsams can involve themselves in an amber base, in an amber accord, what are some others? Excellent. So we have a Tolu balsam. That's one balsam. Now there's one other balsam that's well known, and it has balsam in the name. And there are some others too. If you're very keen and you know your balsams, there's a few others. There's a couple others at least. And then there are a few other resins. The resins that we've already mentioned: benzoin, myrrh, popinax. Excellent. Michias Peru balsam. Wonderful. Excellent. All right. Well, with that said, we have 18 people tuned in, and we are going to get started with some of the naturals here. So, because we mentioned that the core of amber is vanilla, benzoin, and labdanum, we'll start with those three. I'm going to reach for labdanum and some different examples of labdanum extracts and distillations, because there's a few different ones. If you can believe it, there are actually dozens. Let's take a look here. I know that I have a sticky bottle of one of them here. Just bear with me while I get this bottle. Because I thought I put it over here. And it turns out that I left the labdanum with the synthetics. I think it's missing its natural brethren. But don't fear. Oh, shame on me. I don't think I have it with me, and I'm not going to step away. But that's okay, because we have some others that are labdanum extracts, and we'll talk about them first. First, we're going to kind of explain the whole scent profile. What is labdanum? Cistus ladaniferus. So Cistus ladaniferus is the Latin name for labdanum. Labdanum is actually distantly related to hibiscus, if we're thinking botany. And you can tell that from their inflorescences, which is basically the whole flower structure. And to describe labdanum would mean having to consider the texture of it. It's very dry. It's deep. It's chewy. It's viscous, sweet. But it's also somehow herbaceous, powdery, mossy, leathery. It's tenacious. It's radiant. And it has a great fixative value. It is the resident fixative of an amber base, the natural fixative of an amber base. Now, I am disappointed in myself that I don't have the original as if it's the original labdanum, but I have some variants of labdanum here. One of them I have here is Ambrarome Absolute. This is Ambrarome. Now, Ambrarome this is a very powerful labdanum distillation. Now, we're going to get into a little bit about the adjacency between amber as an accord and ambergris. Ambergris actually is adjacent. If we were to draw a Venn diagram, there's overlap. They're not always together, but there's often an overlap. So for this fractional distillation of labdanum that is called Ambrarome, this is actually something that I believe, yes, I am actually right because it's on the label here, Cinnarome provides this. And it is warm and leathery. It's peppery, it's tarry. It even has like aspects of coffee and light tobacco. It's one of the more challenging bases for the perfumer to work with. It's super powerful. It has a punch to it. It's vivacious but almost aggressive if you're not careful. There's like a leathery castoreum element to it. Of course, you have that labdanum because at the core, this is a fractional distillation. There's vanillic notes. None of the sweetness, though. So there are certain aspects of it that smell very carnal and very much human body, unmentionables. If you're looking for a dirty animal note as a perfumer, this is definitely a possibility. Because there's even a slight fecal nature to it, reminiscent of more animalic ambergris types. It is powerful, but interestingly enough, it's not quite as long-lasting as other labdanum materials. So the perfumer will build upon that and may add pure labdanum to this and other fixatives and musks. We'll be talking about a lot of those fixatives because there's a whole lot of them. This could be very useful even for oud notes, but this has frequently shown up in different amber perfumes, especially in the past 30 or so years. One superb release as of late, Christopher Sheldrake of Sur Lutens collaborated with Roberto Greco to compose Roque, which is the newest release, and that features Ambrarome. And here is another fractional distillation of labdanum that in the business is called hydrocarboresin. Hydrocarboresin. This is produced by Biolan or Biolans, which is a natural perfume supplier, natural perfume material supplier. And this is one of my all-time favorite materials, and I just get euphoric when I smell hydrocarboresin. So hydrocarboresin, it is amazingly dusty and incensey and cool. It is a derivative of Cistus labdanum. Now, I'm going to get into this a little bit. So we often talk about labdanum, and this is another good pop quiz question. What is another material from Cistus ladaniferus that we can extract from the plant? And it's from a different part of the plant. So let's check in with the chat here, because I see that it is a little bit of buzz. Hey, Fernando. Yeah, all of these smell unbelievable. Paroli, I do you know what? I can double check to see if it may include some synthetics. In my notes, I don't have anything indicating that. And usually when it is a combination of naturals and synthetics, I would. But I can do some fact checking on that. Because you could be right. Because as I was thinking about it, I was wondering if maybe some other synthetics are used to create the profile. Well, I'm very humbled by that. And yeah, I don't know if I want to call myself a scholar because there are people who are so talented that I have had the fortune of getting to know through, you know, the effluvium live streams, and that are brilliant. But it's very kind of you. I feel like I'm still a student of fragrance, but I really appreciate it, Margie. Fragrance enthusiasts, this is a good question. Are amber, ambroxan, and ambrette all the same? They are not. Those are three very different directions. We'll touch upon what makes ambroxan and ambrette different, and you'll be surprised to find that all three are actually quite different. Amber being an accord, ambroxan being a discrete material, and ambrette being a discrete material as well, a natural material. And Boo, I assume you're referring to hydrocarbon resin? In my hand. It is churchy. So there is one perfume that I reviewed this week. I'll get a little head start in sharing. And it was Black Cashmere from Donna Karan, Rodrigo Flores Rue. And I'm fairly certain he used a sizable amount of hydrocarbon resin in Black Cashmere. Also, the mythical Norma Kamali incense that came out in the 80s, it's pretty much, from what I can tell from my nose, from my sample, 90% hydrocarbon resin. It's just all base note hydrocarbon resin, maybe a little bit of extra stuff thrown in for good measure. Hey, Bilbo Fraggins. Great to see you. So that is hydrocarbon resin. That is another distillation of labdanum. And we have another one here. This is, hold on a second. I want to check one thing here in my pile of goodies to make sure. Yep. I wanted to make sure that I had some of the others out for discussion. And just a reminder, folks, if you want continued context is important too, but if you want continued content like this, educational, informative, enlightening, do please consider buying me a coffee. The link is pinned, and there is a continued offer if you do 6 coffees free. Well, it's not free because you're giving me 6 coffees, but you get a sample pack, and for 12 you get a sample pack and 4 full bottles from my ginormous collection that needs to be pared down. I need to spread the wealth. So if you do 12 buy me a coffee, you'll get a sample pack and also 4 full bottles. That's a grab bag. I can't assign them because then part of it is the surprise, and I haven't had anyone disappointed yet, which makes me giddy that people were happy with what they received, because I'm not going to give people junk. Are you kidding? I know, God knows I've gotten too much junk thrown at me, so I don't want to do that to others. All right, so here is the next one. We have a few of these. This one is actually called Amber Sweetie, and this is one of the driest and most animalic of the labdanum fractional distillations. I purchased this from Hermitage Oils. Back in the day, I used to do ad copy for them. Wow, this one, it almost... It has like a sort of an astringent, drying quality when you smell it, but it's so peculiar. I love it. And it has just this very aged, dusty, dry, leathery quality to it. It's almost like shoe shop leather. And this sort of undercurrent of dirtiness and depravity. It's amazing. This is another really great one. That's Amber Sweetie, which I don't know why it's called Amber Sweetie. This is not sweet like your regular labdanum. I feel like it's been fractionally distilled to remove all the sweetness, actually. So I don't know why that's the moniker for that one. And then we have another one here. This is Ambrain. I actually had to write it on the label because it had worn off. And Ambrain is produced by IFF. This is a bit woodier, gummy, more vanillic, still leathery. I mean, it almost smells edible, but it has like this sweetness and savoriness to it, almost like an umami quality to it. Next, we have another one that is produced by Biolin. This is a natural. This is Dynamone. I'm going to visit the chat very quickly here. Paroli, I actually do have a review for Roque. I did it a couple of weeks ago. All you have to do is scroll down just a little bit on my Instagram. It is also readily available on Fragrantica and Base Notes. I do have a review of Roberto Greco Roque. And I am just beside myself that I actually got the attention of Christopher Sheldrake. He had discovered me through Roberto Greco and my review of Roque, and I'm such a fanboy, and he followed me on Instagram, so I had to gush a little bit. I have long loved his work. 16 years, going on 16 years that I have been a fan of his work with Serge Lutens. Clear, good to see you. In Chipa Fumaner, great to see you. Oops, you dropped your panties. I'll let you take care of that. Make sure to get one that's a better size, that's a better fit for you. You don't want panty dropping now. Umami, yeah. A little salty, a little sweet, a little meaty. All right, let's get back. I know, right? It makes me feel great to know that I'm getting that kind of recognition from perfumers for my writing at this point. So yeah, it's great. So Dynamone, talk a little bit about this one. So this is another one that's super dusty, animalic, more top notes to it. It has much more of an ethereal aspect, which is kind of cool. And this is obtained exclusively from the gum resin of Cistus ladaniferus from Spain. Delicious stuff. Another type of distillation of labdanum. And you just thought, oh, labdanum's labdanum? Mm-mm. A lot of different kinds. And it's all coming from the same plant, except there's different distillation processes. Okay. And there is also one from Firmenich. And we're still on pretty much labdanum. We have a lot to go over. We're already over a half hour in. And this one's nice. Ambranum. I want to make sure that I'm showing, to the point here. Ambranum from Firmenich. This is produced by Firmenich. And Ambernum is interesting because you have more of this ambergris quality. It smells kind of like also like old wood, musty, animal aspects, fecal aspects. Now, and don't freak out when I say fecal. It's not literal mounds of poopy. It's a facet. And also remember, when making perfume, we do a lot of diluting, we do a lot of dosing. We don't pour this in. It could be a very small amount that lends its qualities, that imparts its alchemy into your blend. There's something kind of beautifully cola-like about this too. Like a you think of that cola recipe. Quite interesting. Almost like it reminds me of Dr. Pepper, like a dirty Dr. Pepper. Dirty Dr. Pepper that has been poured onto old wood. I know it sounds very appealing, but go with me here. It's incredible. Okay, I think that I have covered everything that derives rum labdanum. We took care of that. Sorry, that was very loud. We have 22 people who are tuned in. Once again, we do encourage folks for continued content here. That includes Effluvium, these Notes and Accord live streams. Buy me a coffee. One coffee is $5. 6 cups, 50 sample pack. 12 cups, 54 full bottle grab bag, plus a sample pack. US only, please. I apologize, but I cannot do international shipping at this time. If you are international, check in with me. Maybe I could do something else to accommodate you and to make you feel a little bit better about donating to this viewer-supported content. Thanks. And we have Boo asking, do I make my own fragrances? So for some context, I studied perfume making independently, and I could say self-taught, but I actually had a lot of mentors, a lot of research, studying, evaluating, and I did that for a number of years. I did not launch any line. I did not pursue final products for the masses or for even a small mass of people because I wanted to ensure that I had the skill and the more comprehensive understanding of how perfume composition works. Um, and I have been really opinionated about indie perfumers who they don't give it a number of years before they do. And they buy a whole bunch of materials, they experiment with them, and they're like, oh, wow, I just made a perfume. Let me share it with the world. Well, let me start a whole line, a brand. Let me sell this stuff, and let me sell this stuff for a good name. And they haven't really honed their craft. They don't really know their onions yet. They're still, you can still see seams really rough around the edges, kind of not really completely understanding the synergy between materials. They're not really diluting properly. They're not mixing properly. They're not measuring properly. They're not. There's so many. There's a lot out there. That's So if you hear me say good things about an indie perfumer, it means they're really good. Don't hear me really talking about an indie perfumer. Probably because I think they have some work to do, or maybe they're just not. Who am I to say? Anybody has the potential. But I digress. For me, the reason why I stopped doing it is because the pandemic, there was the cost, very expensive hobby. And I just wasn't sure if I was ready to embark on that daunting of a journey to create perfumes for commercial consumption. Um, Perhaps I will revisit it. But for now, I'm more comfortable as an evaluator for other perfumers, which I am currently doing. Um, yeah, I will revisit it if I feel like it. And in the meantime, I have a lot of perfume materials for reference, and that is the foundation for how I evaluate perfume and write about perfume and smell it. But I always try to make sure not to just be completely analytical and evaluative when writing about perfume as well. Like I was saying earlier in this point, I like to be kind of like a balance. I don't want to lose. First of all, you're writing for an audience. I don't want to lose the audience and talk technical stuff. And also, I don't want to lose touch with the very wonder and magic of perfume without being bogged down with more technicality. Verbose, but I think the hands-on training shows in your reviews and commentary, JJ. Thank you, Claire. 26 people tuned in. We have gone through all the labdanum materials. Fortunately, I didn't have an example of just plain old-fashioned labdanum, but thankfully I did have various distillations that are available to the perfumer. Next, we're going to do benzoin. So benzoin is the second one out of the Trinity. I'm going to go over that. I'm going to start off with just plain benzoin resin. I have some benzoin resin that's not diluted, very sticky, very fatty, very difficult to work with. Needs to be diluted, needs in order for it to be workable. This is some that I have that already diluted benzoin resin. I purchased some of this from Mountain Rose Herbs rather. Oh, and this brings me to this, like, if you're a perfume writer or reviewer and you want to show mastery and understanding of the essential components, like, I don't mean you have to get into, like, air floral absolutes and, like, lesser known notes, but, like, the basics, to really identify them and understand them and know how they smell. My suggestion is take a bit of reprieve from spending all that money on perfume and invest in a little bit of reference material. Reference material is not hard to obtain. You can get reference material at your local Whole Foods, natural food market, any place that has essential oils. Then you can get a better kind of familiar understanding. Or you can just order some of this stuff online and you can get small quantities, 2 mil, 3 mil, 5 mil. That's all you need, especially if you're not planning on creating any perfume, but you just want to use it for reference. So they're easier on your nose because there's a lot of reviewers out there, and I don't want to mention names because I'm not about doing that anymore, and I want to be respectful. We're all part of this community and all trying to do our own thing to love perfume. But some of y'all don't really know what you're talking about when you're talking about notes because you're describing them in ways that don't really match how they actually smell. And it would behoove you to have some of these materials. I'm not talking about a lot. I'm not talking about 100. 30. Even 10. If you're not sure. I mean, there's some you probably don't need because you can recognize maybe uneasy spices. Things that are a little bit less accessible to medical, like benzoin. Because benzoin isn't just vanilla. Otherwise, you wouldn't need vanilla and an amber accord, right? Benzoin has its own profile, okay? Go over that a little bit. So benzoin, styrax, pontinesis is the Latin name for benzoin. We often call it benzoin cyan. Hop notes do start off as cinnamic, and that's an adjective, something that's cinnamony. Resinous, that would make sense because it is a resin from a plant. Um, Malty, there's aspects of styrax. We talked about styrax last month for the leather thing. Even some interesting things like bitter almond, black cherry, smoked, even plasticky. Interestingly, plasticky. Like I love when people talk about like, oh, the smells kind of plasticky, and I think that what's interesting is that I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's a dig, but it's kind of like, well, my friend, some of the natural materials may remind us of plastic because of the way certain plastics are processed have the same chemical constituents as are in natural resins. So there are these kind of like smoky, kind of weird, plasticky um, undertone, and then it's just woody and kind of like dark spicy as a dry wine. Like this is actually diluted in alcohol. It smells like this. Yeah, that's a benzoin resin. And then all IFF has benzoin olefac. We have a series of naturals called olefac. It has IFF in the word. It's on olfactory, olefac, Olifac. Smoother version of it. Smoother, more leathery too, like a suede, kind of like, oh, it reminds me of like brushed suede, but with a vanilla underpinning. Oh, nice. And yeah, so those are benzoins. I think that I have, yeah, there you have it. Okay, I think that should be enough for talking about benzoin. Benzoin's pretty straightforward. They do have some variants of benzoin, not nearly as much as lab, but we're gonna rewind a little bit and go back to labdanum because there's also some other. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to confuse folks because I promised we would do the three in the Trinity. We'll do vanilla a little bit, and I'm actually going to sort of cheat and talk about a couple of synthetics because, truthfully, most of the vanilla that you smell in perfume, very little in the way of natural, is built with maybe other naturals and with two specific synthetics. Um, so for those of you who think that the vanilla that you smell all the time is real vanilla from Madagascar, from the island of Bourbon, and unless it's a natural perfumer or if it's a brand that really uses a lot of naturals and those are very expensive. Most of the vanilla that you smell, I didn't, I just most of the vanilla that you smell is vanilla. Most flavor. Vanilla and ethyl. So we're gonna go over to some synthetics a bit to talk about vanilla. I do have, I couldn't locate, I tried my best to locate amongst chaos of the materials the natural vanillas. If they were here with me, I would explain that I would show you that it will sort of pouring it out the bottle. Very viscous, very dark. It's a bit oozy, but not really. A lot of people think vanilla is a vanilla that smells like bourbon or has bourbon in it. Bourbon is an island off of Madagascar that produces a lot of. There's also vetiver from bourbon, Iranian. So I just wanted to clarify that. You see bourbon and then a fragrant material. It's from the island of bourbon. The libation. There's vanillin crystals. Yes, in crystals. They must be dissolved and diluted. Not very glamorous. You're probably thinking some pretty, somebody, that. Uh-oh. All right. So I was yapping away, and apparently I didn't have any sound for a good while. The first time that that's happened. And can you hear me now? Good? Just let me know in the chat. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Fernando. Out of the 25 people who are tuned in, somebody. Okay, I am going to adjust this. All right, so one of my moderators, if you can volunteer and tell me where the audio had cut off, because there were some things that I was discussing. So if somebody can tell me where you'd last heard. Wonderful. Okay. Is there? Okay, great. So what was the last thing that people could hear well? Because I can kind of do a little bit of a recap. I mean, unfortunately for the people who are watching the archive, you heard most of it. Okay, excellent. So I was talking about vanilla, and I was talking about the bourbon and how. Okay, so this is the vanillin crystals. They end up being diluted into a solution. There's also ethyl vanillin, which is much more powerful than vanilla. And ethyl vanillin is famous for being used in another pop quiz. Think of a very famous, formerly called Oriental, now called an amber, from the mid 20th century that has ethyl vanillin. Who can tell me? Give a little time for somebody to give an answer. Margie, good guess. And it is in there, but this is one that has a very significant dose of it from the mid. Oh, that has vanillin. I don't know if it has ethyl vanillin. Definitely has vanillin. Clear? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Shalimar, yes. Shalimar is well known for having a significant amount of ethyl vanillin. And I'm going to try not to do too much moving here because of the connectivity issues with my mic. And there we have Shalimar. Shalimar, the eau de parfum. All right. And vanilla. Vanilla. We don't need to discuss vanilla very much, do we? Or should we? We know what vanilla is all about. We know the aroma. We know the flavor. There is one material, however. I have it in this container here. This is called Vanatrope. This is a vanillic material, not natural. It is synthetic. Vanatrope is some pretty cool stuff here. And the thing about Vanatrope is, if you can guess, Vanatrope is sort of a little bit vanilla and a little bit heliotrope. The scientific name is propionyl guaiacol. Sweet, almost kind of cream soda-like, a bit tobacco-like, anisic, powdery. It's more gentle than vanilla and ethyl vanillin. So that might show up in amber chords as well. Me too. All right. So we went over vanilla a little bit. Back to the plant that we call Cistus ladaniferus. We have labdanum that we extract from the plant. Can anybody tell me who's tuned in right now? There is another extract that comes from the plant. It comes from a different part of the plant, and it's also a resin. Who can tell me what that one is called? We'll wait for a bit. I'll actually gather them up here. And I love this one just as much as I love labdanum. Anyone? This is, I'll give a clue. Labdanum comes from the parts of the plant that are the twigs. Not the twigs, but the middle part of the plant. Botanically speaking, the name escapes me, but it's within the middle part. These come from, this stuff comes from the leaves. And I think the part that attaches the leaves to the twigs and the branches of the labdanum plant. So that's a first hint. Good guess, but we're going to talk about that one soon. That's a different species of plant, though. We'll be definitely talking about that. So 24 people tuned in. Bueller. Don't be shy. There's so many of you who are tuned in, relatively speaking. Can anybody guess? We have labdanum that we get from the Cistus ladaniferus, and we get blank from the Cistus ladaniferus. I'll give it a few more seconds here. All right, last clue. It is in the name Cistus ladaniferus. And I think that's a pretty good clue. Come on, guys. I'm pretty much giving it to you. Yes! Brilliant. Thank you. Drefuden. It is Cistus. So we'll often see labdanum referred to as Cistus labdanum, but technically speaking, as far as perfume materials, Cistus comes from a different part of the plant. It comes from the leaves and the attachments and anything that grows off of the plant rather than the plant itself, save for the flowers. The flowers do not have aromatic material. So we have Cistus essential oil. And this is an organic cistus that I have from Spain. I purchased this from Floracopia. I'll give this one a good whiff. I love cistus, and cistus is it's like the yin and yang of the labdanum plant. So cistus is very treble. It's very higher pitch, higher energy. It's like ground chakra of the labdanum. It is sweeter, it is sharper, it is more astringent, it is even more dry, it's herbaceous. It's like, it smells like a different aspect of warmth than you get from labdanum. The only way I can explain it is exactly as I did. It's like the crown chakra of labdanum. It's like the very more top note heavy. It's beautiful. And the herbaceousness could account for it coming from the leaves more than the plant itself. I love how dry and tonic smelling it is. Medicinal. So cool. So that is the Cistus essential oil. Also from Cistus ladaniferus. And here is some aged Cistus Absolute. I purchased this from Mandy Aftel of Atelier Perfumes. Here is a aged Cistus Absolute, 5 ml of this. Wow. There's like this toffee, burnt caramel, smoky quality. It's just dazzling. So this is kind of like the heart chakra. I'm just using this as a metaphor. I'm not getting too hippy dippy right now. Although there's a time and place I can. This is more like the heart. It's like the heart of the labdanum. So you have the Cistus essential oil at the very top, the crown. Then the Cistus Absolute in sort of the heart. Then you go to the resins and the absolutes of the labdanum. And that's sort of like, you know, the sacral chakra. It's very cool. I like how the music kind of is impeccably timed with what I'm saying. Back to the chat a little bit on. Wasn't tricky enough for us. Philippe, wonderful to see you. That is actually one of the fragrances that I'll be featuring in the second hour. I can't believe we're still talking about naturals. There's a whole lot that goes into amber. And we have just a few more naturals to go over. And then we go into synthetics, which I'll gloss over some of those because there's an abundance of those. And we'll talk a little bit about woody ambers and what's that all about. I did see a question from Margie earlier, and I should have started, and I'll get back to that. And I'm just kind of going through the audio issues that I had momentarily. Fernando, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The super chat to get the attention of me that I had audio issues. And Aperol Spritz, I hope that you stuck around after the audio issues stayed. Boo, I know you're probably already gone now, but it was wonderful to have you here. And okay, all right. What is the difference between amber and ambergris? Good question. Okay. We'll talk about that a little bit to give you context. Just going to go back to the, okay. So amber is an accord that is a summation of different materials to create an effect that it's argued that some of the goal was to emulate the characteristics of ambergris, but it isn't ambergris itself. Ambergris is different. Ambergris is the actual expectorated material that is vomited, or rather, well, not vomited, actually removed. It's not feces, but it is removed from the same evacuation process from the sperm whale. And what I was mentioning earlier is that there is a lot of adjacency between amber and ambergris. So there's overlap, but amber doesn't necessarily need to have ambergris by any means. Ambergris can function in many different types of perfumes. It can function in just about any style. So I hope that's a good enough explanation. Also, another thing for people who are wondering, and this brings me to another natural material that we're going to chat about a little bit. A lot of people think amber literally comes from amber that is a resin from a tree. The truth is that that true explanation, actually, now that I'm recalling, even as I'm just blathering on here, is the reason why it was called amber is because of the color. So when you do this, this accord, and and it ends up being blended and mixed, the color of the final product is amber colored. And that's really where amber comes from. So there's a lot of debate as to what, how early on, people had experimented with combining these materials and then for it to become what is known as amber. But it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. So that's why if we were talking about ambroxan or anything like that, that would be an ambergris discussion. It's not necessary, and it isn't really, part and parcel of an amber accord to have ambroxan, although there are perfumes that are constructed that have an amber accord and ambroxan. There are perfume materials that have an amber accord and ambergris, but ambroxan and ambergris are not necessary for an amber. They don't really make or break an amber. So I hope that helps. Oh, scent difference too? Scent difference, well, when we think about amber, we have to have some of that sweetness and that resinousness and the smokiness and a little bit of that animalic, but they're different. It's different, fundamentally different. Ambergris has a marine element, a slight halitosis element. White ambergris, however, has a minimal amount of that. That has more of like a tobacco to ambergris. Let's just put it this way. Ambergris is hard to explain. There's qualities. That's what makes it such a magical material. So it smells fundamentally different. It's like you wouldn't smell ambergris and mistake it for something else if you're familiar enough with it as compared to a combination of benzoin, vanilla, and labdanum. So I hope that's helpful too. It really has its own facets. We may use similar adjectives to describe the scent profile, but there's something really mysterious, almost even like strange rosiness, strange sort of like, it's just, ambergris is a whole other beast. We could do a live stream just like this, just for ambergris, honestly. And maybe we will do that in the near future. It is. It's a mysterious material as well, because it isn't. You can't really harvest ambergris. It's really a matter of it finding you than you finding it, and that's why it's so valuable and so uncommon in perfume. And most of the time, it is reproduced and in some pretty convincing manners. Or in some cases, I am convinced that small amounts of the tincture of ambergris is found. Some examples of that include Mix XXX, composed by Antoine Lee from Eris Parfums, has real ambergris in it. Encens Mythique, a rare example of Guerlain actually using rare materials. I do believe that has some ambergris tincture in it as well. Drefuden, when aging ingredients, do people just let raw materials sit, or do they add in stuff that helps maturation and then let it sit? Good question. So I don't want to sidetrack too much, but there are various materials that help fix. And there are certain diluents that help fix: DPG, IPM. DPG is dipropylene glycol, isopropyl mysterit. There's another thing called Herculin D. It's all different things that help the raw materials sort of mingle and marry and macerate. And that maceration process is a process before it hits the consumer. So I've talked about this elsewhere. There's no such thing as the expectation to let something mature after it has reached the retail space. The purpose of perfume, unless you're a nut like me and you collect so much you can't use all of it, parentheses, the main purpose of business for perfume is when you get it, you use it. So they don't want you to hold on to it for months until it so-called matures. There's no such thing as that. That's called oxidation. That's called degradation. And that doesn't even happen that fast. And unless you're literally putting a bottle into the hot sun or into a hot space and with a lot of light and a lot of conditions that are going to destruct those components. Jerfadin also says, you mentioned some adjectives of how people describe amber scents, resinous, balsamic. Is there any difference in between resinous and balsamic? We'll talk about the difference between resinous and balsamic because I'm going to get to some balsams. We talked about them. Peru balsam. I'm going to talk about that. Tolu balsam, etc. It's all coming. It's all going to come together. It's all going to fall into place as we continue talking. Because now we're at 8:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm like already halfway through, and I haven't even finished the naturals. Amber's pretty imposing. When you smell real ambergris, it gets much easier to tell the difference. Precisely. So, real ambergris, or even something for reference, like ambergris olefac. I don't want to get into too much of it though, because that will be a whole other live stream. But you're right. Reference materials. You go to things like Creating Perfume, Perfumer Supply House, Perfumer's Apprentice. Get little samples. I mean, it's if you want to go down that route and like really try to identify, it is so helpful. Yeah, On-Sun Smithique is brilliant. You're welcome, Dreffadon. I hope that was helpful. It's okay. I get tangential too, obviously. That's cool. Christy, great to see you. Salty marine air. Yeah. Well, that makes sense because it has been floating on the ocean for a long period of time. And the better the quality means the longer it has been floating and maturing and aging in the sun, baking in the sun while in that water and collecting all that sort of those marine, organisms coming in and out of it. It's just fascinating. Okay, so we're still working on the naturals here. We did benzoin, we did vanilla. Now we're going to move to the resins and balsams. So now we can talk about a Popanax. Who likes a Popanax? Now, a Popanax is also known as sweet myrrh, but it is not the same species. Popanax is related. It's a relative. It's a cousin, but it is not myrrh. And it has a somewhat different scent profile from myrrh. So let's get into this. So there's the essential oil. And the essential oil is a little bit different in its scent profile. It's very dry, it's smoky, it's sweet. It has a balsamic quality. So there we go. This opens a conversation for balsamic, balsam. A balsam is something that has it's a very round smell. And what does that mean by a round smell? Smooth. Texture. Think about texture and scent. It's almost like it's almost creamy, but not quite. You know how like in language, you may say like a T a little bit differently, or a D, or an R, and it's different texture. Think of it that way. So when you have something that's vanillic, that's one kind of texture. And you have something that's creamy, that's another kind of texture. And balsamic is just like sort of like a roundness, and it often comes from things that are balsams, and they often have this sort of vague kind of weird leatheriness without it being necessarily leathery. It's an interesting kind of description. Resins can be balsamic, balsams can be resinous, can get confusing. But with the Popanax essential oil, there's this weird kind of red earth acidic quality to it. It's so bizarre. Dries out kind of like root-like and woody and undergrowth-like. And it's often used together with the Absolute, which I have some here. This is another Absolute that I have from Atelier Perfumes, Popanax Absolute, 5 milliliters. Botanical name, by the way, folks, is Commiphora erythrea. Commiphora erythrea. We're going to open this up. so cool. Like there's like these acetates. So if I ever do like a whole other shebang on like chemistry and the chemical constituents, what are acetates? Acetates have a very kind of like high pitch trigeminal effect. It kind of hits the back of your throat, kind of like feels kind of like sharp. Think of nail polish remover. Now, obviously, this stuff doesn't literally smell like nail polish remover, but you know that kind of feeling like, oof, that's your trigeminal nerve. It's picking up a sharpness. It's almost like a temperature, even though it isn't necessarily cold or hot. But that's your trigeminal nerve is also used for that purpose, to pick up whether something smells hot or cold. And that's what I get from the top notes of this. But what's also really beautiful about a Popanax is it smells like toffee, especially the Absolute. There's a bitterness, but also a sweetness. Now, is anybody a fan of like Heath bars or Score bars or chocolate covered toffee? And there's that certain quality to the toffee, the scent, that's unlike caramel and it's unlike any kind of other burnt sugar. That's what I pick up. It smells, it has an interesting toffee quality. And, you have that warmth, you have that sweetness. This has a fixative quality, as many resinous absolutes do. And there's even sort of like a powderiness to its dry down. But don't be mistaken, a lot of Popanax perfumes may have a powderiness, but often I feel like that more has to do with the other things that are surrounding it than the actual Popanax itself. Now, another question for the audience. And a hint is, it was also an answer previously. What fragrance famously has a Popanax in it? Famous fragrance, already was an answer earlier, that has a Popanax. Yeah. Molassesy too. Yes. Treacle, like golden syrup treacle. Yeah. Yeah. I want to smell it again. Yeah. Oh my God, it's delicious. Oh yeah, totally. Sharp, sweet. Menthol without being menthol. Kind of the same feeling as what menthol does, because menthol hits that trigeminal nerve as well. Exactly. Score bars are delicious. Oh my God. I would steal everybody's Score bars around Halloween while they weren't looking. Duncan, what's up? Vanillish, tomatoish. Who's counting? Pearlie says, my favorite ambergris are Encens Mythique, Ample Saplan, Lorenzo Ambra Mix. How about that? I think those are among my favorites as well. Nice. Hey, Donnie. Howdy. Good to have you here. We're just talking about a Popanax. Now that we've chatted about, well, we didn't get the answer. What is that perfume that famously has a good dose of a Popanax? I've often wondered, don't know for certain. Definitely know that there is like a strong fractional distillation of labdanum in that, though. And then I do have that at hand here as an example. Now that you mention it, we do have Le Lion, a modern amber novel, Marvel. You know what? To me, I think that I think it does have a Popanax in it. It has an Popanax, like absolute to it, along with that labdanum. Ding, 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 ding. Yes, Shalimar. Shalimar has a Popanax. It has it in droves, and it also has a lovely civet that does this cool thing with the Amber Accord and the Popanax. Yes, great reference for a Popanax. Also, another lovely Popanax, L'Énervé Imperial Popanax. This is much more Apoponax forward. So for fans of Shalimar who really want to focus on the Apoponax more than anything else, this is lovely. I don't know if it's still in production, but seek it out. If you're a huge fan of Apoponax, you can't go wrong with this. Well, my hint, Margie, was it was already an answer. Oh, I was hoping that you'd pick up on that because I wanted you to get one. Oh, Santa Maria Novella Apoponax is gorgeous as well. That to me is like an Apoponax aromatic. So it's not even so much like an amber. It just so happens it's an Apoponax in an aromatic. It's so good. All right, so we're going to go over to Apoponax's somewhat more famous cousin, myrrh. And look at this. This is just myrrh that I picked up at Whole Foods for experimenting. That's how easy, you know? I mean, if you don't have a Whole Foods near you, a natural food market or something like a grocer like that, order it online. I don't know how expensive myrrh is today, but it isn't terribly expensive. And you can try to get a small quantity, even if you don't need all of this. Myrrh. Margie, you don't suck at this. You don't. There will be no self-flagellating. There'll be no self-deprecating here. There's no self-insulting. You're doing just fine. You actually did have a good answer earlier. So you know your stuff. Don't sell yourself short. Myrrh. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about myrrh, but first. And Perdazine is another brilliant one. Yes. And Perdazine is another wonderful Apoponax fragrance. Very high. That is actually a great reference for Apoponax and Tolu Balsam, which I'll be talking about a bit. Oh my God, am I going to have to do 3 hours? I didn't even get to, I guess I'll just integrate all the different perfume examples as I go along. So myrrh. Myrrh is Commiphora myrrha. That is the Latin name. Myrrh is very well known as being a biblical gift with gold and frankincense. And when we put together frankincense and myrrh, we get a classic incense accord. But that doesn't necessarily, myrrh needs the frankincense. And frankincense, you could take or leave frankincense in an amber. It doesn't need to be there. It's not essential. And frankincense, olivine resin often moves things into a more incensey direction. But myrrh on its own doesn't necessarily do that. It may, but it doesn't necessarily. So with myrrh, it has some similar qualities to Apoponax, but it's decidedly more. There is sort of like a more of a resinous quality than a balsamic quality. Here we go. I'm going to confuse again. Now I was talking about this one being resinous versus balsamic. I find it interesting that it has like sort of these oddly vegetal kind of qualities to it, strangely soapy to my nose at times, rooty, earthy, pungent. I think it's such a cool scent on its own, but I do think it's an acquired taste. So myrrh often needs to be part of an ensemble for, I think, people to better appreciate it. Typically, myrrh is great pals with aldehydes. There's something about aldehydes that brings out some of those peculiar and beautiful qualities. Take, for example, a fragrance like Le Myrrh from Serge Lutens. That is myrrh and aldehydes. That is like as if you took Chanel No. 5, got rid of all the other stuff, and made it focused on the aldehyde and the myrrh. And it does often show in ambers because ambers can include a lot of different resins, balsams, etc. So that's myrrh. And we'll move that over here. And we're almost towards the end. I think I want to kind of gloss over some of these. So there's the balsams. We have Peru balsam. And Peru balsam. Oh God, I was so ill prepared here. I know I brought the Peru balsam. Peru balsam's cinnamic, but Tolu is even more cinnamic. So to me, Peru balsam is sort of like if you were painting and you were using different shades and tints. Peru balsam to me would be like a thick, deep, rich reddish brown that you would paint on your canvas. And then a Tolu would be like the cinnabar color, this like orangey red. So I'm getting into my weird synesthesia stuff, but that's kind of like how they smell. It's like there's similarities to them, but they have their own je ne sais quoi to them. That like one, I mean, I guess one could argue one could kind of replace the other if necessary, but that would be a shame as far as I'm concerned. I wanted to smell my bottle of Peru balsam. And I thought I brought it up here. Oh, I did. Here we go. Here is what is called Myroxylin perire. Myroxylin perire. This is balsam of Peru resin. This originated, the provenance of this is El Salvador, wild harvested. From Eden Botanicals, here we have balsam of Peru resin. Time for more confusion. Why is it a resin when it's a balsam? Because balsams can be resins, but not all resins can be balsams. It is a conundrum in perfumery that we'll never get to the bottom of. But this Peru balsam, like I said, is pretty cinnamic. And it has like it has like the same feel as chocolate without smelling like chocolate. Does that make sense? Am I losing you? It doesn't smell like chocolate, but it kind of tickles the nose the same way. Yeah, it's a much darker balsam than Tolu. We'll get to the chat for just a little bit. We have a very active chat at the moment, and I'd love to see that. Christy, scent of the day, Krigler Lovely Patchouli 55. Ooh, high roller there. That's a great brand. Very pricey. I hope you got a good deal on that one, but they have some lovely stuff. Great. I hope you're enjoying that. Oh, sample. Yeah, there you go. All right, there's my answer. I don't have any Krigler. That's like, I have a cutoff. And, you know, for somebody who's like, is insane about like collecting, buying, and you know, there's just, that is just like a price point. Krigler, Henry Jacques, like, that's just like beyond my league. I'm not rich. I can't do that. I just can't. Oh wow! Oh wow! You should try to get your hand on both of them. Yeah. Yes, Olent, Jacques-San, Michi, you're right. Olent, Olan. I always pronounce it Olent. Olan. It does have a fair proportion of Popinax and some Peru balsam as well. And that's true. We could get into scent chemistry, but I'd be here all night. But Tolu balsam, it's interesting. If you read about its uses as a healing unguent, as an antiseptic, fascinating stories about Tolu balsam. And the scent chemistry thing that I was just talking about a second ago, my mind's all over the place. So there are certain constituents and components, one of them being toluene, and toluene is close chemically to another type of toluene. There's different toluenes, I believe. I might be wrong. Somebody could correct me if they know more about chemistry. But think about like you know, how many steps removed from one thing to another. Incredibly enough, Tolu balsam is just a few steps away from chemically the type of component that makes TNT explosive. It's the truth. I just am not articulating it very well. You could look it up. It's fascinating stuff. And I have it right here. It's not explosive in and of itself. This is not dangerous. So Myroxylon toluifera. Notice it's Myroxylon. It's a very close cousin of Balsam Peru, Myroxylon perere, and Tolu Balsam Absolute, Myroxylon toluifera. And like I said, this is like a higher, this is much more cinnamon. This is almost kind of like that feeling of like hot ball cinnamon that you don't even get from like cinnamon. It's kind of like a hot ball, but it's also really dense and deep and woody and vanillic as well. And almost cosmetic. We always talk about iris smelling kind of cosmetic, but Tolu Balsam has an interesting kind of cosmetic smell to it as well. Love this stuff. There's one fragrance that highlights Tolu, and I have it nearby, and it's a Ormanger Tolu Eau de Parfum. So this would be a good reference for Tolu. Wonderful florals in this as well. Wonderfully powdery, but not oppressively so. Great florals, great jasmine in it, as far as I recall. Okay. What are my favorite myrrh perfumes? Le Myrrh is one of them. I had a sample that I nursed off of for a long time of Myrrh Ardent from Anicotal. I love the myrrh that is in Oriental Velour from Les Indémodables. A good portion of myrrh is in that one. Those are just some examples. There's more that I can't think of off the top of my head, as outrageous as that sounds. Don't do it, Margie. It's way too expensive. Like, if I don't have anything, that it's just like it's like unobtainium. Like, the bottles are crazy. They're like $450 to $600. Don't and they don't even give samples. They're like so stingy. So I'm assuming Christy got a sample from somebody who already had some of it. I don't think that they actually do samples. They want to be that exclusive. Christy already warned you. Scent of the Night from Duncan, El Dorado Kingdom, a cheapie from TJ Maxx. It's a fantastic spicy sandalwood affair. All right, so we went over the balsams. There's also another one. We have Gurgin Balsam. It's much lesser known. And this one is not in the same family botanically. It's more a distant relation. Balsam Gurgin. Dipterocarpus turbinatus. I have to really open this one. It's sticky. This is much more woody and dark. I just wish it showed up more often in perfume. Just incredibly beautiful stuff. But that's Balsam Gurgin. I just wanted to bring that one up. We're not going to go over it too much because it isn't a common one, but very cool stuff. All right. And I think that we had gone over all. Okay, we're going to do one more natural on the basis, and then, I have a half hour left. I don't know how am I going to fit into just talking about the perfumes themselves. Maybe we'll go over a little bit longer, but not too much longer. I ran out of steam after 2 hours. So people often ask, can you get perfume material out of amber? Often people say, no, it's not possible, but you can. So this is just say you're in a textbook at school and you have one of those little boxes and it's kind of like, did you know? This is like sort of like a little like footnote, a little like sort of afterthought with everything, because this is not really used in amber perfumes, although I think indie perfumers have decided to incorporate it into amber accords and bases because it literally comes from amber resin. It's true. There is a solvent extraction of fossilized amber oil, and I have it here. This is sold by Eden Botanicals. Commercial Perfumery doesn't use this for amber, but I thought it'd be fun to talk about it anyways because it's technically amber. It doesn't smell anything like amber though. So we're talking about fossilized amber that is melted and solvent extracted. Wow. Wild. It's really smoky, almost like rubbery. It is just this fascinating stuff. It's so smoky, and it's really viscous, woody, pine. Like obviously there's some pine because we're talking about the resins that come from conifers, mostly pines or maybe juniper or cedar. I'm assuming maybe this particular one, it kind of rubbed off. There's actually a Latin name on it. Well, oleum, and I can't read the something or other. And then the third one is ambar, which is Latin for amber. But it's fascinating stuff. It doesn't necessarily smell ambery at all, but the creative license of perfumers, they can incorporate it into an amber. I think that this would do very well in a tobacco or leather or like a smoky fragrance in a really effective way without it leaning too far in like a, you know, a barbecue-y or kind of campfire direction. It's a very nice smoky that avoids some of the trappings of cade or birch tar. So that's fossilized amber oil, amber absolute, not really used in amber perfumes, but it just so happens to be from fossilized amber. Then lastly, there are some bases that are used. These are pre-made bases. There is the classic Amble 83 that is produced by Simrise. This is a base that has been in and out of production for a century or more, I think. This is sort of the archetypal amber of perfumery. There's nothing in common with, you know, the ambergris. This is all about that classic amber accord. Vanillin, labdanum, benzoin. There's powdery musks that are included in this base. Sandalwood's included in this base. Tolu balsam. Styrax. There's like also a rosy stuff. This is a mixture of synthetics and naturals, geraniums in it, nutmeg, cardamom, all kinds of, it's a perfume in itself, but this is an amber base. There's also like acidityness to it too. This has been used in a lot of classic perfumes, including some that I'll be talking about a little bit. Like, I don't know if it's being used in it today, but Taboo from Dana, Taboo, Amber 83, and a few others as well. And then one other interesting base, the Armenian wood base. Now this is very cool, the Armenian wood base. This one is produced by Firmenich, and this one, I don't know if anybody's familiar with like Armenian paper, like what do you call it? It's like an incense paper, and this is intended to mimic that Armenian incense paper. And it's really beautiful. It's this distillation of benzoin with a few other materials, synthetic, natural, just some gorgeous stuff. I'll open it up. Yeah, and it smells just like the incense papers. I would really recommend, if you can even buy some of it on Amazon. Buy Armenian paper, incense paper, just spectacular and enchanting stuff. So this is an Armenian wood base. I thought I'd throw in a few bases that are used in perfumery. Keep in mind, just like I talked the last time for the leather stream, that bases are pre-made and they can be incorporated into an existing composition, and some remain in production for years. But sometimes perfumers may not want to lean on them because they could go in and out of production. So that's something to keep in mind. We did all the naturals, and it only took me an hour and a half. I don't think we're going to work on the synthetics for very long. So people often hear of things called woody ambers. So a lot of the synthetics that we now know as woody ambers were developed for perfumery to build upon, extend, increase, boost the amber accord with woody elements, and there is sort of a juxtaposition often in perfumery of having woods with amber, as you can imagine, especially cedar. Cedar to me is often considered, much like bergamot, to be a crux in perfume. There's a lot of cedar in perfume that's there even when you don't realize it's there. So when you have something like a woody amber, it is basically fleshing out perfumes in a way so that it has higher, more sillage, more projection, more fixative value, more longevity. It holds, it fixes. Fixing in perfume is when the larger molecules hold on to the heavier molecules, rather, hold on to and anchor the lighter ones so they don't evaporate really fast. And there's a lot of these, and I'm not going to get into like the minutia of each and every one of them. I mean, there's tons of them. I mean, you probably already know some of them from people complaining about it being overused in perfumery, which I'm inclined to believe and agree that it is. And there's a lot. Bornifex. Bornifex actually is one of the more interesting ones that I've experienced. A lot of these I do appreciate, especially if they're used with a judicious hand. Bornifex is also called woody propanol. This is very ambery. It's also woody. It has fixative and diffusive qualities. It's cedary. It's vanillic. It has this sort of like an aggressive quality. This is not one of the more aggressive ones. This is actually quite a pleasant one. This is, I believe we would pronounce this. This is produced by IFF. This is trisamber or trisamber. So trisamber is another amber that is used in perfumery. It's in that woody category. Simply in my notes, I just refer to it as a very strong woody amber note. This needs a light hand. I think that there are some perfumers who go heavy on this. Fix amber. So you think about fixative. This has a very strong fixative quality to it. It's also called trimofix, amber decatriane, decatriane. I think it's decatriane. I think so. I'm just going to call it fix amber. This is an interesting one. Woody, tobacco-y, musky. There's so many of these. They go on and on. I'm not going to, talk your ear off about them. There's Amber Max, produced by Givaudan. Same idea. Isolongifolianone, also known as Piconia. This is a very cool one. Great for ambers and also for incenses. You just keep going and going and going. Y-samber or E-samber. This is produced by Simries. This is another one that gives you that beast mode, woody, ambery, cedary, fruity. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us to bring up the woody amber because it's more of a recent development in the past, 25 years that we have these coming up. We have cedramber. Cedramber is another one. So note that there's a lot of cedar and woods that are combined with these synthetic materials and these bases and these. This is a great amber cedarwood substitute. And, we have some famous ones that we have the classic Bois Ambrine Forte, the amberwood Forte. It even has amberwood in the word. This one is a beast. So when you're smelling Sauvage, when you're smelling these very strong, many of them are men's, but some are women's. Lots of brands like Parfums de Marly, Xerjoff, Stéphane Umberluca, Kylie. Ooh, definitely Métier Premier. They love this stuff because they know how people love to have very diffusive perfumes. And Brossenide was at one time very tastefully used. One of my favorite ambers, Amble Fetiche, actually has, from what I recall, Ambrosinide rather, in its formula. but it is meant to be, a means of diffusing and lifting the amber, not merely as a means of making it a powerhouse. Caranol, which I think was recently, it's now restricted as a material. I forgot for exactly for what reason. Another extremely powerful and radiant material, a dry and woody amber note. This has been used in soaps and detergents because it can handle high temperatures and it won't wash out of your clothes. So take that as you will. Think about it. There's materials that are useful for those functional products because they can take a licking and keep on ticking, so to speak. But they're often in many woody, ambery perfumes, dihydroamberate. I can just keep going on and on. Of course, I have no limbinol here, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that all of the synthetics are woody ambers. But this isn't the interesting thing about ambers, is that whereas there are some notes and accords that really require a majority of synthetics, amber doesn't really need a lot. It really just relies, if we're talking about vanilla, vanillin, ethyl vanillin, labdanum, and benzoin, they're not very expensive materials, and they're very effective, and they're gorgeous, and there you have it. I mean, we'll get into some other notes and accords episodes where it's like you really need synthetics in order to build whatever it is that is the subject of the discussion. But amber isn't one of them. There's one other synthetic that I found very interesting, and it's called cistulate, after cistus, because it has like a very significant cistus quality to it. This is produced by Vicon. And they call it a Mediterranean pine ingredient with a cistus character. You can use it up to 2% in a formula, and they say that modifies and freshens the top notes, particularly in herbal and pine fragrances, adding diffusivity, warmth, and interest. And they're right. This is brilliant, this stuff. It really does smell like the freshest, purest pine with that cistus quality to it. It's almost like the cistus, and it kind of has my brain, the gears going in my brain, like, wow, it makes me think like cistus would go well in a coniferous composition. It would be great for building that. So that's pretty much how much I really wanted to spend on the synthetics, because an amber accord doesn't really rely too much on synthetics. There can be things that can modify and enhance and extend and all that stuff, but really it's about the core, and everything else just sort of surrounds the orbit. All right, back to the chat. Papier d'Armani, yes, Papier d'Armani. Taboo smells a lot like Kalam. They both are nice musky ambers for sure. And Paroli is reporting that there is a sample set of 5 times 2 mil for $225. No, that makes no kind of sense at all. Nichonnet is another one that employs a lot of their fragrances employ woody ambers. Even their more left field animalic numbers do. Donnie says ambroxanite is the only woody amber I can stand in small doses, used in a lot of spicy, fruity boozies. Yes, boozy fragrances often have that ambroxanite, or the amber max, or the amber core. Amber core is actually, like I didn't mention earlier, but amber core is sort of like the softer side of woody amber. It's like the one that like I can actually smell out of a bottle and not feel like I'm assaulting my olfactory receptors. But ambroxanite is one that I have like an appreciation for if it's dosed in just small quantities to create an effect. And somebody's asking about Cuir Fétiche by Métier Parfumier Gantier. No, but now that you mentioned Métier Parfumier Gantier, that is one of my favorite ambers. Ambre Précieux from Métier Parfumier Gantier, or MPG, so I don't have to keep saying it again and again. And this is like a very plush and showy and powdery and and winsome kind of amber. It's quite like a classic kind of amber. Ambre Précieux. I think that was a good time. We'll let it run for a little bit longer, and I'll share some of my favorites in the amber category. Whether they're, when the 90s came around, we started to see sort of like a deconstruction of the amber, where amber wasn't simply sort of like necessarily, a family of fragrances that had the amber accord in it, but we were seeing more amber being pushed into the foreground. And who out there can tell me maybe one of the first well-known amber fragrances in the 90s that pushed amber into the foreground in ways unprecedented? Let's see if somebody knows. Amber Tonic in the listed notes. Interesting. I don't even know that one. And I had 25. I brought all of them, but I was like, I'm not going to keep going on and on. I don't have an Amber Tonic. I've never heard of that one. I'm sure it could be a new one that exists that I'm not aware of. Yes. So think 90s. Think a cult favorite house. One of the more successful releases to come from the house, and it was one of the ones where we have Ambre Précieux in the late 80s, but this is the one that kind of put like the amber niche fragrance on the map in the 90s. Close. I think that they kind of followed suit. Now that's a little different. Happy Crumpus Day. Like your name. So that's different because that's like an amber perfume, sort of like the more holistic family. We're talking more kind of like the deconstructed amber, where it's like amber is like at the forefront. Amber is in the foreground. Let's see. Oh, Mishi once again. Ambre Sultan. Yes. Yes. It had become legendary. Ambre Sultan, the dry and herbal and grassy and aggressive amber. So many good memories with this one. This was like a signature for me for some time when I first discovered Serge Lutens. I was wearing this nonstop in like 2008, 2009. I've had a few bottles of it since then. Ambre Sultan, that is the one. That's the one that I had in mind. Thank you. Unfortunately, Paroli, I can't vouch for the modern version of Ambre Précieux. I know I have one of the older red bottles with the charming cat with the charming gem on it. I love Métaux Parfumé Gantier though. I have not tried the more recent ones. I do apologize. I'm a little spoiled when it comes to that. Ooh, I am getting things out of context here. Magie Noire, Canada. I give a thumbs up to Canada. Yes! Congratulations, Mishi. All right, so for the remaining time here, I hope you did enjoy the review of the perfume materials. I hope that you found that to be informative and useful and enlightening. So we'll talk. I'll just show some of my favorites. We have some others that are great. This is Ambre Khanjar from Nuit Oman, or Nuit Nomade. This is amber with a very prominent plum note. Plum newt. I have newt and plum in this. But seriously, this is a great plum amber. There is a myriad ambers on the market. But some are the standouts. We mentioned earlier, somebody mentioned that they were wearing Ambra Aurea from Perfume Roma. This is a very dark, unguent, unctuous labdanum. I kind of think that some of those like fractional distillates of labdanum are in this. And look at that beautiful color of that juice. There's a lot of labdanum. Look at that gorgeous color, those materials. Man, that's Ambra Aurea. So that would be, you know, if you were thinking, you know, X parts vanilla, X parts benzoin, X parts labdanum, and you think, oh, you know, your average amber is kind of like 2 parts vanilla, 2 parts benzoin, 1 part labdanum. Did I do that right? 2 parts benzoin, 2 parts vanilla, 1 part labdanum. This, 4 parts labdanum, 1 part vanilla, 1 part benzoin. It's very benzoin heavy. Okay, and I think we're just going to kind of like go back in time. We're going to go backwards. Miller Harris, a great deconstructed amber, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Very high in a labdanum distillate in here. One of the most beautiful vanillas, and the fact that it is just like this very dirty bedchamber animalic quality to it. I think there's even like hostas root in it. Beautiful, beautiful. The smell of old books and old libraries. It's almost like having sex in a library. L'Adrien, it was actually made for Jean Birkin from Miller Harris. One of my top 5 all-time favorite fragrances, actually. And that's a favorite amber. Okay. And L'Ombre Fave from Pierre Guillaume Paris. This is a furry amber. This feels like it just feels like a furry animal that just swaddled in like an amber scented blanket. Love it. And, you know, we would be remiss without mentioning some of the classics that we have. Of course, we know that Opium is legendary as a spicy amber. And while that one is a little bit more floral leaning, I am partial to the beauty that is Cinnabar from Estee Lauder, which I was wearing earlier. And whereas Opium is a little bit more spiced lily and spiced carnation, this really pushes those resins kind of more to the foreground. So the two are not just, you know, Cinnabar's not just Estee Lauder's version of Opium. It has its own character for sure. And even Balenciaga jumped on the bandwagon with their own spicy amber with Balenciaga Prelude in the early 80s. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. This is very sheer amber. So while Opium is opulent and like almost oppressive to delicate sensibilities, like you're smothered by this fur coat of spice and amber, this one is just like a light and lovely one. Doesn't mean it's, you know, weak, but it's just like a beautiful sheer amber. That was released in the early 80s. And another lesser known amber from the mid 80s, Laura Biagiotti Night. Look at this gorgeous bottle. Laura Biagiotti Night. This is when you started to see the ambers of the late 70s, which in and of themselves were influenced by the ambers of the earlier 20th century, merging with the zeitgeist of the 80s. This is a quintessentially 80s amber in that you have a lot of those like powdery, spicy, sweet, and animalic and leathery qualities and all that good stuff. But you're getting a little bit of that tuberose that's kind of like becoming, de rigueur in the mid 80s, and those like plush and posh and sexy florals that were coming in. It's another gorgeous one. Unfortunately, it's not very easy to get, but the good news is when I do see it for sale, it's not an arm and a leg. That's Laura Biagiotti Night, another excellent amber. So we're going to continue rewinding here. Before we do, one more from the 80s that I need to mention. Coco Eau de Parfum from Chanel. Essential when discussing amber. Moving further back in time. Oh, wait, let's fast forward a little bit. We can't forget the 90s. Okay, let's have somebody to decide. Should we fast forward to the 90s a little bit and then go back earlier in time to the 70s and 60s and back? Okay, somebody else make the decision for me, because I'm horrible at making decisions. And while I get a decision from somebody, we're going to check with the chat here again, because we do have sort of an active chat. Anuj, great to see you. Enrique Coveri Porom, amber in the base, dry down. Not a lot, but just a nice touch. Yes, I think that is a good honorable mention for this, for sure. Happy Thursday to you as well. Thank you for stopping by, and thank you, Dave, for stopping by as well. Ambroria has no ambergris to your nose. That now, to me, that's up for debate. There are things that kind of remind me of ambergris, but I'm not sure if it's actually so. To me, it's just very much labdanum, and I'm sticking to that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But hey, what do I know? Yes, that was Prelude by Balenciaga. Yes, correct. Okay, fast forward to the 90s. Margie decided we have just 3 from the 90s that I wanted to talk about very briefly. We already talked about one from the 2000s earlier when I mentioned black cashmere and hydrocarboresine very early in the stream. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. Can you believe it, folks? Astra, which is one that I had reviewed this week, a very lovely spicy amber. This is sort of like the 90s take on the opiums and the cinnabars, but this is when we started to see these like kind of warm, comforting, baked apple pie with raisins and spices and everything, and it's just very, very festive and holiday-like to me. It's just so cozy, so beautiful, and this sort of stylized miso bowl, kind of 2 miso bowls, one on top of the other. That's what this bottle. One of the more distinct bottles of the time. That's Astra from Fendi. And this came out in the same year. The Solar Amber of Christian Dior, Dune. Dune is definitely one that is worth mentioning when discussing the classic ambers of all time. And, pardon me, this is Gianmarco Venturi, Donna. Oh my God, look at this bottle. Can we talk about how a work of art this bottle is? It is sculptural. It is monolithic. Look at this. I'm kind of pulling a Dana Sandu here. I love when she would do this. Yes, lovely. This is beautiful too. Now this is another. Oh my God, it almost makes my mouth water. I have to do a review on this one soon. This is Gianmarco Venturi Donna, a very quenching, fruity, spicy amber. Oh God, almost unknown. I mean, at least today. In its time, maybe it was popular, but look at the side of the bottle. Look at that. Look at that. That's a gorgeous one. Okay, all right. Now we're going to skip back beyond the 80s, beyond the 70s. Let's go to the 60s. Bala Versailles. We must mention Bala Versailles. This is, such a classic, kind of like an intersection with some cheaper qualities, but it is an amber through and through in the base, a floral, sultry kind of amber. Michael Jackson loved it. I think Elizabeth Taylor did at one time. The legend behind this one. That's Jean Dapre, Bala Versailles. I have the Perfume as well. Oh, this one from the 70s. I'll be doing a review on this pretty soon. This is from Germain Montier. It is Bakir. This is the cologne spray. It's been long discontinued. This actually predates opium, and it does take its cue from the classic amber. I keep wanting to say Orientals. I want to be sensitive to that. But the classic ambers of the early to mid 20th century, and this one is very sultry. It has like a certain dark floral quality. It's kind of like Youth Dew meets like a Spice Bazaar. Very wild. I think there were some reproductions that were made by some perfumers when this was discontinued. So it is a sort of like it has a cult status. That's Bakir from Germain Montiel. We have just a few more. We're almost done here. So, of course, we did talk about Taboo a little bit earlier. We must mention Taboo. We talked about Shalimar. That's another one. And Youth Dew. Just mentioned it a moment ago. the classic that is youth dew. Yeah, this is just like a kitchen sink of spices and resins. It is like a kaleidoscopic amber, and I love just like how powdery and effulgent it is. It just feels so grandiose. Um, it's the classic. I've gushed about it already in a review. I don't need to do that again here. You can read the review. And just two more here, I think. Yeah. So we know about, so we were just talking about Donna's Taboo. We have 20 Carats by Donna. And this one's quite lovely because this is one of the few in this dubious genre that I will refer to as the butterscotch amber. And you're going to be scratching your head like, what? Butterscotch? Because this is so buttery. It's like butter rum. It's like kind of like a whiskey. And mind you, this came out ages ago. I mean, this is probably a bottle from the 70s. It smells fresh as it was, as if it were produced yesterday. And I call it a butterscotch amber. It just has that weird, buttery, sweet taste. Like, not taste, but it smells like what it would taste. Yeah, I have to get into more detail about it, but this one's pretty unique. 20 Carats Eau de Parfum from Donna. And lastly, another forgotten classic of its time. It was subsequently produced by, I believe, Donna. Took the rights and of the brand and maybe the composition of formula, and then did something with it, and it got diluted and it got relegated to like garbage, allegedly. I don't know for sure. I just went ahead and got myself an older bottle of it because it wasn't that expensive. This is originally from Corday, and this is called Toujours Moi Eau de Toilette. Another lovely mid-century amber. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Just a shimmering bergamot at the top. Lovely spice florals in the middle, and all of the good, tasty trappings in the base. All those labdanum, benzoin, vanillic resins, and all that good stuff. That's Toujours Moi, Corday, Paris. And that's the last one that I'm going to share. And it brings us to 9:05, so I made pretty good time, just over 2 hours. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think of the way that amber is composed? What are some of your favorite materials that are used in amber? What are your favorite resins? And what are your favorite kinds of ambers? Are you more like a spicy amber type, floral amber type, a woody amber type? These used to be called spicy oriental and floral oriental or floriental or woody oriental. So just remember, when I'm referring to those as such, that's what I'm referring to. So are there favorites in those genres, or do you like more sort of like the streamlined, pared down focus on the amber type ambers? And let's take a look at the chat here as we start to wind things down. Gilles Sander 2. Mm-hmm. That's one that I didn't set aside, but that one is overdue for review. That one is a goodie. Very good one to mention. And it is really animalic. It is. That is probably one of the more animalic ambers. And Dr. Don, what's the strangest amber mix you've smelled so far that is worth sniffing in your opinion? Oh, wow. The strangest. See, this requires my asking you the question back. What constitutes it being strange? Now that I think about it, the Gilles Sander 2 that Duncan just mentioned is one of the stranger ambers, because that's a really like bold Castorian civet musky amber. I mean, that is one of the stranger ones, actually, now that I think of it. because it is like it really is more in that direction. Kind of the way that like an animalic chypre would be an animalic amber. Um, I don't know if I would really categorize it as such, but Schiaparelli Shocking is kind of like a midway between a chypre and an amber. It has an amber accord, but it's I think more considered a chypre. That's pretty out there. That's pretty like lecherous smelling. It's a really dirty fragrance. Fendi Astra, yes. I know I'm a little behind here. Ah, le Baiser du Dogon, that's another lovely one. Is that still in production? Yes, yes. Yeah, it's a good one. Donnie, I'm so glad that you could join us here. I hope you have a wonderful night. And Ambery, farewell to you as well. Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Thanks. Sometimes I like to clean up and look decent in front of the camera. Yeah, the bottle designs, they have me excited sometimes too. Yes, Bala Versailles. I love the appreciation and excitement for Bala Versailles. Just a reminder, just a reminder, folks, buy me a coffee, buy me a coffee, buy me one, buy me two, buy me five. Let's see, we're going to do a coffee check. I'm going to check to see if any coffees had come through. Let's see. And think it's just one coffee is $5, so. And I officially have 0 coffees for the night. I hope that can change. Send 1 coffee. It's only $5. If you send 6 coffees, you get a free sample pack. It's not free, I know. You get a sample pack, though. And if you purchase 12 coffees, you'll get 4 full bottles from my wardrobe, from my collection that I'm willing to let go, plus a sample pack. And that is 12 coffees. Each coffee is $5. You do the math, and that helps for this. Helps this viewer-supported content, and helps me to pay my live stream yard bill. It helps me to pay for other equipment to improve things. Things are improving slowly but surely. The next improvement will need to be the audio, apparently, with the issues from earlier. But buy me a coffee. 6 cups gives you a sample pack. 12 cups, 4 full bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. US only, please. Or if you don't want to donate 6 cups, that's fine. Just 1 or 2 would suffice. 0 coffee so far. 1 wonderful super chat from Fernando Soto during my audio snafu, and that's much appreciated. Okay. And that should be its slogan, Bella Versailles. It gives me a chubby. Yeah, I mean, even the newer bottles are quite nice. And I don't think you, like the one that I have, I think it's from like the early 90s or late 80s or something. Bella Versailles is not going to cost you an arm and a leg even if you get a vintage. So just keep that in mind. Your wife can deal. At least she can tolerate you wearing something at all. Yeah, you did come in a little late, but it's pretty late where you are, my friend, right? Algebrea says a favorite new amber is Artaban by Astia Divya. A beautiful marjoram note in it. Ah, nice. Marjoram has this lovely herbaceous, crisp, cool quality to it. It's kind of like oregano without the sharpness. Even some little bit of anisic quality to it, but not very much from what I recall. Or it could just be BS in all of you. I'm just trying to recall from scent memory. I do like the smell of marjoram. I actually have a fragrance that I'm keeping my eye on right now that focuses on a marjoram note from the 90s. So I'll keep you guys posted about that one. Umami ambers are the best. Histoire, Ambla 114, still my favorite. Spicy powdery amber. But that's sort of a straightforward, it's an amber. It is like focusing on the amber. When it has amber in the name, you know it's all about the amber. But I'd say, yeah, it's more on the spicy end. It's a spicy and powdery one. And Philippe does confirm that Cartier does still have Le Baiser du Dragon on their website. And Au Coeur de Désert or Les Baisers are on the top of the amber list for Philippe. Yes, there is that sweetness too. There is that sweet quality, which is why it can pair very well with the florals and the ambers. Well, bust my buttons. Look who it is. Thank you, my friend. We're going to just stick around for just a few more minutes here. We have 27 people who are tuned in. We had a good run here for about 2 hours discussing all of the different materials that are accessible to the perfumer as far as building an amber note or an amber accord in perfume. I've talked about some of my favorite fragrances that fall into this category. And you've mentioned some that I do enjoy as well that I did not set aside, but probably wish that I had, like Jill Sander 2, Chef's Kiss. So, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like a really dirty amber. It's a dirty, dirty amber. It's so good, though. There were a few of those from the early 80s, actually. Papillon does amber well. Much respect to Liz Moore of Papillon. Okay. Not going to run for too much longer here. I think we've exhausted a great deal in this conversation. We covered a lot of bases for you, for all of us. You can tell that I'm running out of steam here, having difficulty articulating a single thought. That's what happens when you cover a lot of material in a short span of time. Dirtier than Bal at Versailles? Yeah, it's actually dirtier. Jill Sander 2 is dirtier than Bal at Versailles. It would make Bal at Versailles blush. It would make Bal at Versailles clutch its pearls. It's very dirty. Thank you, Christy. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Mishi loves. Ooh, yes. Hi, love spell 125 from Papillon. Another really good one from Liz Moore's. Very nice. 26 people tuned in. I'm going to do a coffee check because I'm pretty much just going to run on coffees right now. Thank you. I want to make an announcement. Anuj, thank you so much for the coffees. Pat Lester, thank you so very much for the coffees. The support that the both of you provide to this channel and for this viewer-supported content, it means a great deal to me from the bottom of my heart, and I wish both of you an excellent holiday season. Thank you so much. So next month, I will be doing tobacco. Tobacco will be the focus, which will be a fun time. It's very late there. Get a good night's sleep. Bye-bye. So next month will be tobacco. And then February, I was thinking about just before it gets warm again to focus on a nice cold weather kind of theme. And I thought that maybe doing incense would be a good idea, to shift the focus to incense. And what do folks think about that? Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think that's worthy of a 2-hour stream for notes and accords? Let me know if you think that's a good idea, folks. You have 27 people tuned in. You can put a yay or a nay, thumbs up, thumbs down. Would incense be good for February? Let me know. Supply and demand. Hello. Dirty amber would have been a great word. Make up dirty Diana. Very, very funny. Okay. What is this? What is that? Oh, cigarettes. Cigarettes after sex. I just recently started listening to a band with that name, and I thought it was such a brilliant name. Cigarettes after sex. What are the other options to choose from? Well, I don't know if I really want to get into incense as it gets closer to the springtime. But I could think of some other. I mean, there are some other options. I was thinking of dedicating a whole stream to rose. I have thought about doing a whole stream for fougères in the springtime. I think February might be a little too soon. I want to kind of get into the mood, here where we have 4 seasons. I have a tendency to do that. So fougères was another one. And I could also use some feedback from those who are tuned in. What ideas you might think are good for doing notes and accords live streams in the future. So I'd love to hear your ideas as well. Florals for spring, definitely. I was thinking of doing florals like smack dab in the middle of spring, maybe May. But I feel like rose could be separate. Rose is kind of like a whole animal unto itself. Like that deserves like a separate stream altogether. But florals would be good because you could encompass a lot of different florals that don't necessarily, have as much variation or have become like, you know what I mean? I think that just doing a florals for, less complicated florals that only involve like maybe a few materials and covering all of those would be, an excellent idea come springtime. Lover's Month, animalics? So are we talking about animalics? We could do animalics. So let me hear from the folks here. We're starting to get a little bit of a decrease in people tuned in. Okay, we have 24 people tuned in. Animalics is an option. Let's hear from people. Tobacco we already have for February, for January. It's already on for January, Paroli. I think maybe it was you or if it was somebody else who was like, you got to do tobacco. Last stream. We're doing tobacco next month. Moneyburner says, I need me a perfume that put my woman in the kitchen. That would involve a consultation. We can discuss rates. DM me, and I'll help you out with that. Yeah, totally could be all by itself, for sure. Incense is a great idea for a stream. We definitely need a dedicated stream for fougères. Springtime, definitely. Now, if I could only figure out how to do a poll, I don't know if I have the capability to do that. I've seen other people on streams. I could do a poll of incense or animalics for February. So 23 people tuned in, so I should see a bunch of votes coming in. Incense, animalics, incense, animalics. Cast your vote. I'm going to take that as a vote for animalics, right? Patchouli. Patchouli to me, I could do it too. Let's put that one in the back burner. Let's get some of the heavy hitters out of the way, and then if we start kind of whittling it down to less, we could do that in the future. Herbal would be, oh my God, herbal would be great. Yeah. But we're doing February, so let's think of something that would fit at least my season here in the Northern Hemisphere, so I'll really be in the mood for it. So we're thinking things that are, animalics could be worn in the cold weather up here, and incense. We have Sardonic Sophisticate with incense, Margie with animalics. I know, Sophie's choice, right? What about the obscure category of animalic incense? There's a few out there, actually. Paroli votes for animalics. Philippe, animalics. Pat Lester, animalic. Callie's Groom Room, you missed last month. We already did leather. You missed it. We already have a whole archive stream. That was last month's Notes and Accords. You should check out the archive. Yeah, check out the archive from last month. Leather's already been done. We did a whole thing just like this last month for leather. we'll just get in a few more votes, and then I'll do a tally, and then we'll decide, and we'll wrap things up. Fernando says incense. Animalic is a word made up by Fragcom. Oh, there's a lot of words that are made up by fragrance enthusiasts because there's a very limited language to describe scent. Smoky frags. Truth be told, I'm pretty picky when it comes to smoky fragrances. Like there are a number to me that can verge on oppressive. So some of the favorites, like Bois d'Assaise from Naomi Goodsir, or Bois Sicard from what is it, Atelier something or other, Atelier des Ors, and I'm picky about the smokies. So I don't know if I could do a whole 2 hours on it. I could do like sort of a handful. I could definitely tell you that there's not going to be very many materials to discuss smoky, because there's a good like 5 or 6 that pretty much do it for smoky, like heavy smoky. It could be sort of like an interest. I could do like a stream where I do 2 different themes in the future. But we got to kind of pare it down though, because I don't know if I want to do smoky or anything all through the spring and summertime anyhow. I'm thinking that it's kind of in between incense and animalics, but I think it's about time for me to count, to count the votes here and make a decision. Hi, Prof. Melvin. Hope you're doing well. Carnation would be a lovely one too. Yeah, Carnation. Don't know about a full 2 hours for Carnation, but that could be another example of something where I might do kind of like a double, sort of like a, what do you call it? A double hitter? A double header. There you go. I could do Carnation and something else. But this is just for February, and it's between incense and animalics. Sandalwood in the future, absolutely. We'll do sandalwood. There's a lot of materials for sandalwood, actually. You'd be surprised how many like synthetics, how many different types of sandalwood. No comment. It's good to know that some people add a little flavor and a little bit of tomfoolery here. Okay, I am going to count. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bear with me, folks. All right, so I have 4 official votes for Animalic, and then I have I have 3 for incense, and there's like 20 people too. People are really shy. Like we need some more votes. I don't know if that'd be fair to just go by like 3 votes for incense and 4 for animalics. I think we're just gonna have to do animalics. Maybe we'll do incense for March, and then we'll move on to springtime. Or maybe we'll just wait until next year for incense. I don't know. I fly by the seat of my pants. Animalics in all reality. Okay, it's been decided. It's been decided. That's right. We will be doing animalics for February. So, for those of you who mentioned leather, please refer to the archive Notes and Accord stream from last month for leather and enjoy. Next month, it will be tobacco. And then, February, animalics. We'll be talking about all the different animalics in perfume, the naturals, the synthetics, everything in between, gray area, and some of my favorite animalic fragrances. We'll do that in February. All right, the time is now 19. The time is now 19. In military time, it would be close to that. I think actually it would be 21 27, 9:27 here. Um, this has been a fun time. I'm so glad that so many of you could tune in and enjoy this Notes and Accords stream. Next Tuesday, we'll be doing our next effluvium stream. We're going to have Patrick Rice. He is a writer and journalist for Fragrance. He writes for Fragrantica. He's going to be our guest with me and Rachel next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check that out. And for you folks who have been missing the archive streams, we've had some really fantastic guests in the past few weeks. So check out those archived effluvium streams. It's been a really great time. And we're going to keep doing those every 2 weeks until sometime in the springtime. And then we'll do another, summer break. So that's going to be it, folks. It's been real. Take care. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Stay in good health and have an excellent holiday, whatever holiday you celebrate. Bye-bye for now. Take care.